kindness,
people and places,
sincerity,
love,
integrity,
the incredible universe. You're listening to the Living Out Loud podcast with Natasha Moy and Dr. Vincent, where we talk about life, love, and the universe. You're listening to the Living Out Loud podcast with Natasha Moy and Dr. Vincent, where we talk about life, love, and the universe, which basically means we can talk about anything we really want. So my co-host, Dr. Vincent, is a fantastic scientist who has an amazing product, which you can actually find in Woolworths. And today, the two of us are going to be interviewing Marina Passalaris. Marina is a brilliant businesswoman. She owns a business called Beautiful Minds. She's also been a very, very long-term friend of mine and someone I deeply respect. The first time I ever met her and interviewed her was actually on a show that I had quite a few years ago. And she just keeps getting more and more impressive. So, Marina, I'm really excited to invite you. Dr. Vincent, I'm so excited once again to be doing another amazing podcast with you. And originally, I interviewed both of you. So clearly, this is the only way I can make friends.
I was thinking the same thing, and I was like, what a wonderful, wonderful platform and friend to have to actually start a podcast because, Marina, this is our first time with a guest. So having a friend as a guest is actually really great because we can redo this if we're not happy with the result. But I think we're pretty good. So
easy. Wow. What an honor. Thank you both. Great to be here.
No, it's such a pleasure. One of the things that, one of the reasons why we've obviously decided to do this podcast is because we're in the middle of COVID-19. And I tend to always hashtag all my Instagram posts with fuck COVID-19, which is not something you really want to say on a podcast, but needless to say, it is the way I actually do feel about it. However, it has completely transformed all of our lives. And Marina, the reason why you're on this podcast today is because you are a teen expert. You have been working with teenagers, girls and boys for a very long time. How long, actually? Don't age yourself here. Just be careful.
Almost 17 years.
17.
Wow, 17 years. So, I mean, as an ex-teenager, well, I'm still a teenager, I think. But I can safely say that is a long, long year working with teenagers because, in my opinion, those are, because I used to lecture as well, and those people, the age group is one of the hardest people to connect with. Not necessarily to work with, but to connect with. And when Natasha put you forward as one of our potential guests, when we were still brainstorming, I was really, really, really excited because I think a lot of people would like to listen to how, first of all, how you built your business, how you got into the business, and all the stories between those two.
One of the things I wanted to ask you was you started with teenagers and etiquette. It was very much around the etiquette element, which of course is quite a sort of maybe a slightly more old-fashioned view, but you've transformed your business into, you now work with teenagers on self-esteem and particularly on trauma. Why did you start where you started and how did you get where you are?
Look, it's really interesting. The business has changed so much over the years. And so it did start very much as a grooming and deportment type workshop for teenage girls at the start. But, over the years, I've evolved the business dramatically. And we're currently in 935 schools around Australia. And we run 170 of our own one-day workshops around Australia. And we've also just launched a non-for-profit arm of the business in the US. So it really has expanded, but it's also needed to change as it's grown. And focus for Beautiful Minds was always mental health, and even that has changed dramatically in the last year because we actually don't want to be dealing in that mental health space. We really actually want to be dealing with that preemptive strike on trauma. So trauma has become such a huge focus for us because we really believe that if we can get to young people before they're in that really, really traumatic stage where they are struggling with PTSD and overwhelm and mental health issues, it's a lot harder to take them out of that stage. So we really want to kind of place ourselves before that happens. And so the focus for the team, the direction for the team has changed dramatically. And the work that we're doing is really about saying to people, this is about mental fitness. This has got nothing to do with mental health. This is about keeping yourself, body, mind, and spirit fit so that you don't fall into that bucket of really struggling with some issues. And far too many of the mental health organizations in Australia only really deal with it once people are in a crisis point. There's very few people dealing with it. In fact, 1% of our funding goes to preemptive trauma. The rest of it goes to the later stage, which makes it so much more difficult on the individual to get them right, but also difficult in terms of being a drain on society. And so we've really shifted and pivoted the business in the way that we look at things now.
Wow, that is really interesting, because this is actually, seriously, honestly, the first time that I heard the term mental fitness, because as a health expert myself, but I'm more in the nutrition part and physiological rather than psychological, it really does make sense to me that instead of basically addressing the symptoms when the symptoms appear and then it becomes like a problem, you're actually preparing them mentally to be able to deal with it before the problems start to appear.
Yeah, we're putting layers of Band-Aids on top of people and not actually giving them the solid tools on how to deal with it. And there's very few places in Australia that are doing this and doing it well. You know?
Can I ask you a question? What is trauma? What is trauma?
Trauma can look like a whole lot of different things. You know, you can be traumatized because you lost your pet, your family animal. You can be traumatized because you're a 3-year-old child and your family has disposed of your blanket. Trauma can show up in a lot of different ways. So we've got to be careful when we're looking at trauma. It's about helping people to express themselves emotionally and to be able to be very resilient in the way that they operate as a human being. And that's basically what we're trying to do here, is give people the tools and the tips to be able to know how to handle their emotions, to be able to self-soothe, self-regulate as they go through life, because we're all going to hit massive challenging bumps along the way. You know, even COVID-19, the way that certain people are going to deal with this right now, whilst we're in the war of COVID, everyone's going to look at it and deal with it very differently. And it's based on the skills that they've learned throughout their life.
So do you think that if we learn how to deal with trauma early on in our life, it actually will prepare us to because, you know, the positive, while we all try to be positive and sunshine all the time, but we can't avoid things such as trauma or traumatic events in our life, especially as an adult. So do you think by learning those tools early on in life, it actually prepares us to be more resilient mentally at the later stage of life?
Absolutely, because all we're trying to do is give people a framework to work from, so that they've got some steps and some tools that they can go to when they're feeling very overwhelmed by something. And, you know, it's not about making people happy all the time, because that's impossible. You know, we don't operate like that as human beings, but it's about saying to people, I'm going to give you the structure so that you can go back to that toolbox when life has become a real challenge. And that's, you know, that's the virtue, that's the wisdom, that's your belief set that you have. And expecting that kids just have this as common sense is not. It's not possible. They don't. You know, we need to kind of instill that in them, and then also follow through with actually helping the parents bring that message home.
So currently, during the COVID-19 pandemic that we're having, which, you know, I keep calling the disaster, there are a whole lot of children that are sitting at home with parents in environments they've actually never really experienced. As I said to Dr. Vincent the other day, you know, there are parents out there who are meeting their children for the very first time. And there are children who are meeting their parents for the very first time. Fathers who have spent very little time with their children, and mothers as well. You know, these kids are being raised by daycares and by kindergartens and then by
Instagram.
And by Instagram, exactly, through social media. So this new this new introduction the children are having to their family structures is going to have some kind of effect. What kind of effect do you think children are experiencing suddenly stuck at home with parents they've never really known?
Look, it's interesting. I think there's a mixed bag of responses at the moment. There are going to be kids that are really loving it and are just feeling that they're getting that support that they've been craving for a long time. There are kids that are not going to be enjoying it, and it goes both ways for the parents as well. There will be parents that will be struggling with being in this really confined space with family members. So I think it just depends on the individual families, but I think that there's so much that we can take out of the situation in terms of learning how to reconnect, and we've been given this opportunity for hopefully a short period of time where we can stop and we can regroup as a family and get together to actually become stronger. That's what we hope is going to come out of this at the end.
Do you think, though, it's important for not only for parents but also for siblings and children at home to have that, or to learn that skills of compartmentalizing things? So I'm not sure if you have the data or people have done a study, how many parents now are converting into homeschooling simply because they are concerned of the risk of sending their kids back to schools. But I would imagine it would be very hard for someone to wear the hat of dad and then suddenly wear the hat of Mr. Williams to be like a teacher. So do you think that this is an important skill to learn, to transition, not necessarily from one person to another, but the same person, different roles?
No, I don't think parents should even think of themselves as the teacher, because they're not. Let's face it, they're never going to be a teacher. They are the parent, and they're stepping into a role for a short period of time. Now, short period of time might be till the end of the year. We don't know. They're talking about schools going back gradually in the next 2 or 3 months. But at the end of the day, I would say to parents, don't try and be a teacher. Be the parent, but set those boundaries and have that routine in place so that, your child is learning in the best way that you possibly can, given the current circumstances. And I think don't be so strict on getting them to wake up at a certain time. If your child is waking up at 10 o'clock in the morning, but they are really, really thriving because they need that additional sleep, I don't see that being the end of the world. As long as the work is getting done, that's great. And I also say to parents that we've been speaking to, beautiful minds, try different learning. Get super. So if you've got a young person that's not particularly good with maths, get them in the kitchen, chop up some vegetables together, and there's some creative ways you can play and learn around the family home that is going to make it enjoyable. Because one of the things we've got to remember is that a lot of kids would much rather be at school with their friends. And so it's difficult for them as well. And so it's difficult for the parents. It may be difficult for some children. Some children are thriving and loving it. But, as a family, you should be looking at ways that you can make this easier, and don't fight your kids in situations, set those rules of what's got to be done every day, but try and get creative with how it is done so that it's enjoyable for both parties.
That is so true because...
Sorry,
I was just going to say that's so true because Marina just reminds us that sometimes as parents, like my parents sometimes think that, it's so hard for parents, but they forget that it's also hard for kids.
Absolutely. And that actually falls quite nicely into what I was about to say. So I've been teaching podcasting to a wonderful lady who does early childhood. She helps parents who are career-based to manage their children and their own sense of self, their own expectations. So what she does is she deals with career women who probably have had their children later on in life. And the biggest thing that they have an issue is, why can't I make them? Why can't I make my children do this? Why can't I and they feel this terrible sense of failure because they're used to being successful at work. They're used to people listening to them, and they can't understand why they can't make the 3-year-old do what they told the 3-year-old to do. And they don't understand that this 3-year-old is incapable of it. And I think that I've got two 15-year-olds at home. And it's really interesting because they're doing homeschooling. One of them is absolutely flying. He is doing so well. I have never seen such great results. The other one has fallen completely through the cracks. Literally, I think he thinks because he's at home, they don't know that he's not submitting his work. So there's two completely, one thrives, one doesn't thrive. But this whole idea of parents making their children do something is a very interesting, and I think that's where all this trauma for parents comes in. Marina, when you get these kids, do you ever just look at the parents and just think, this child is fine, you are the problem?
All the time. No, I shouldn't say all the time, but a big majority of the time, because we are.
I'm sorry to cut you there, Marina, but can you actually say this on the record and I can send it to my mom? Sometimes,
No problem. Sorry, no problem. Sure. Look, I think as adults we project on our kids. We do it. We all do it, and so we see it often at Beautiful Minds where a mum or a dad will write into us and say that they're going to be enrolling their kid in a workshop. The child suffers from extreme anxiety, social anxiety. They're not going to cope during the workshop, and that the parent will actually sit at a cafe and see how the child goes with the full intention of probably taking the child home within a couple of hours if the child's not thriving. And we see it often where a very anxious parent will drop off an extremely anxious child, and within 20 minutes the child is not even concerned about where the parent is, and that parent is carrying that anxiety for both parent and child. And so we do see it often that adults are projecting their stuff onto their kids and actually not trusting that their kids will actually be okay. And so that's something that we're really trying to say to parents, even now during COVID. As adults, you're going to have your own fear around this virus, and the fear about paying your mortgage or your rent or feeding your family. Don't project that additional trauma onto your young person. They have enough to deal with. Be the adult, run the family home like it should be run, give them structure and support, and that's going to be the most important thing.
So, you're doing a lot of work, I know, around this trauma, and you actually sort of started working outside of Australia in the US. So quite a bit of your work now is starting to move online. Obviously, your workshops are stalled because children are not allowed to be around one another. So that must be a big blow to a business that relies entirely on human beings congregating in a space. How do you change a business model when all of a sudden you land up not being able to meet and greet in the numbers that you were able to meet and greet?
Look, I have to be very honest. It's been such an incredible opportunity for the business because we've been wanting to go online such a long period of time, but I haven't had the time to be able to do it because we are servicing 1.5 million. Yeah, in a year we're servicing 1.5 million kids through the school programs, and then we're servicing 5,000 kids that privately sign up for our workshops and retreats. So we haven't had the resources to be able to pause and transition to an online space, which is what we wanted to do. It's been such a big focus for me. Luckily, we're actually going back into the schools from June, July, and we're doing quite a lot of work through some of the schools now where we're doing Zoom calls and all of that. So there is that need from the schools that as soon as they're able to open their gates, we're going to be busier. We'll be busier than we've ever been in our lives before because schools know they're going to need Beautiful Minds support more than ever. But when it comes to the physical workshops that we normally run every weekend, throughout the whole year, it has been a massive, massive job to pivot this business. Huge. But I think, my partner Brendon and I were really lucky to be in the States a couple of weeks ago with our US team. Everyone was in the same area and we were able to really knuckle down. We were at Stanford University, which we've got an amazing partnership with. We had all of our global experts with us and we were able to and we were pulling all-nighters to be able to get a Stanford Beautiful Minds program online, up and running. And we got that done, fairly early days in, which has been fantastic.
That is so amazing. Can you talk a little bit more about the partnership with the Stanford University, please? Because that just seriously, that's very impressive. And for you to pivot, that's a term that you use. I think that's a really, really good term to use, because instead of looking at it as a big sort of kind of blow, you're looking at it as an opportunity where you can pivot and expand your business.
Look, it's a huge opportunity, and I can't take all the credit. My beautiful partner, Brendon, went to Stanford University, and he was a screenwriter for Warner Brothers for a long time, and so he had some amazing contacts that we've been able to tap into. And so through his network, we've been able to pull together an exceptional team of people. But they've also done for, almost 17 years, and the success that we've had in Australia. So it's been a beautiful marriage of the two worlds, and that's just made this team so much stronger. So what we're doing with Stanford is we're working with Dr. Andrew Huberman, who is the world's leading neuroscientist. He's often in Time magazine for his work, and he's doing some really extraordinary things. We're also working with Ryan Suave, who works at the Fear Factory at Stanford University, and Jennifer Brace, who has the Catalyst program. And the Catalyst program that we've actually tweaked for the Beautiful Minds audience was created many, many years ago, and then tweaked again when the 9/11 events happened in the US. And they actually gave this Catalyst program to the widows of 9/11. And then when the Sandy Hook shootings happened, they actually gave all the students this program to go through. So it's really had some massive, massive global events, those people that have gone through the program that have been supported by it. And Beautiful Minds have taken this program in the partnership with Stanford, and we have tweaked it so it's now available online for parents, teens, and preteens, and the content and the outcomes are exceptional.
I'm really curious about how you feel we're going to change and teens are going to change. Your feelings around what's going on. I mean, it's such a huge thing in your particular area. I've seen so many parents on these online forums on Facebook just desperately seeking some kind of, I think they're trying to, they want to know that they're doing a good job. They want to know that what's going on in their homes is normal. I'm one of those parents who just thinks I'm an awesome parent regardless of what's going on, and I'm a screamer and a shouter, but I still think I'm amazing. So I never really worry too much about my parenting. But I know that there are a lot of parents out there that want to get it right. They have the same need that all the people I teach podcasting to do. The people I teach podcasting to always want to make a perfect podcast, and there's so many parents out there who want to raise perfect children. Neither of those things, I believe, is possible. So, Marina, your feelings around what's going on and how you think kids are going to come out at the end of this?
Look, I'm hoping that kids will learn a lot about themselves, and we're so accustomed in our society to be completely distracted all the time. We've got kids that are doing activities after activities after activities, homework. They're just busy all the time, and I'm just really hoping that the fact that young people have been given this beautiful opportunity to be able to actually pause for a month or 2 months or 3 months, that they'll be able to learn to sit with their feelings, to learn to be more connected with their family, will appreciate their friends more, will appreciate the value of going to school, which so many kids around the world don't have that opportunity to get that education. Our kids in first world countries whinge all the time about going to school. It is such an honor to be able to be in a family where you are able to afford to send your child to school to get an education. And I'm hoping that kids will distance themselves off social media, reconnect with their friends, and just be a lot more aware of the environment. And maybe, as the next, the future generation of our world will come up with some great ways in terms of how they want to see the future of their country or their community. And that would be great if we can kind of come out as really evolved human beings from this. It would all have been worth it.
That is so true, because the thing that you explained about distraction and time poor, I mean, yes, before COVID-19 happened and before all the lockdown and all the social distancing and limitation happened, yes, sure, you could be really, really busy and distracted, and you didn't have time to do things or to learn new things. But now, if you still come out of this COVID-19 situation saying that, oh, I couldn't do this because I was too busy or I was too distracted, then perhaps those people are just lazy.
Yeah. And we we're not taking responsibility as human beings, and we're not teaching responsibility as parents. Everyone has a responsibility unto themselves to do what they need to with their own time. And I felt really sorry for poor old Gwyneth Paltrow, who came out and said, learn a new language during this time, learn to cook, do something with the time that you've been given. And everyone completely annihilated her and just said, this is a pandemic and we're in fear. You're in fear if you choose to be in fear. You've been given the time, and I really believe that all of us should be doing something of value with the time that we've got, even if it's reading a book to your child at night, and that's not something that you normally used to do. That is an incredible value add to your family.
Oh,
I'm going to ask you.
I love Gwyneth Paltrow. She named her kid Apple, and as you know, I love apples.
That's true. That's true. I'm curious about two things. Dr. Vincent and I came up with these two questions. We asked each other this the other day. And on a personal level, what are you grateful for, Marina?
I'm grateful for my partner, and I'm grateful for my family, because I think to be able to have someone obviously that you live with, and we obviously work together as well, and have had that support, emotional support going through this has been really incredible. And our team at Beautiful Minds has been amazing. We're all working remotely. Everyone is super positive about the way that the business is going, the new direction. So I'm grateful for the people around me, the quality of the people around me.
And on the flip side, and usually this is actually Natasha's side of the question. I know I'm supposed to be the one who asked the question that you just answered, but that's okay. That's okay. I can ask Natasha's question. So on the flip side, what are the things that you are afraid of?
Look, I'm afraid that we won't get back to the festival and the beach days and the beautiful things that we do as human beings, the traveling and those sorts of things. And I'm afraid that humans will take a step back from each other in the fear that, they will get the virus. I'm afraid of the racism that'll come from this because of where it's potentially, the blame game. So those are sorts of things that are, for me that do worry me. I see the positives in this. And I just hope that we come out of this as a better world, because I read a beautiful quote a couple of weeks ago, and it was, it said something to the effect of Mother Earth has, has had enough of us, and she sent us all to our rooms to think about what we've done. And I love that, because I think that that's what we've got to kind of do, is really come out of this as better human beings. And yes, of course, we're all scared of what the world's going to look like, but no one knows at the end of the day. And I think that we can only take it 1 week at a time, one day at a time. That's pretty much it.
Wow, there you go.
We've come to the end and of this fascinating new medium, because let's be honest, I've grown up podcasting in a studio where I've got all the bells and whistles, and doing it differently. We're now podcasting and creating a Zoom video. I've never done anything visually like this before. So it's been quite interesting to know that we cannot be perfect. This is not going to be the perfect podcast. It's not going to be the perfect video either. But the information that you've given us and shared with us, I think, is to some degree perfect. It's wonderful to be able to listen to an expert talk about things. And I'd like to revisit interviewing you at a later date, once we've come out of COVID, to see what you've heard from children and what you've heard from parents in terms of what they've actually experienced through this patch. I know that for me, it's been a very positive experience with my children. I've had a really amazing time. And I know that for lots of people, it's been great. Some people probably, the big tall buildings looking really, really appealing right now. But that's not for them. I saw that wonderful meme where the parent drives up to school on the first day and actually throws the children out of the car and with their school bags and then roars off. They're so excited. But I think those are the toddler parents. I think the toddlers must be very, very challenging. So, no, none of us will be throwing anybody out. But I want to thank you, Marina, for coming and just sharing your time with us.
As a matter of fact, Marina, you just gave me an inspiration, an idea. So starting now, if Natasha agrees with me, we are going to call our guest or our expert friend to the show, because in the past 30 minutes that we are chatting, I feel like even though I don't have you in the same room with me and Natasha, I feel that we are talking like friends. You have been so informative. You have answered the question at the both professional and personal level. So you started this. Everyone who comes onto our show, we will call them, instead of guests, we will call them friends to the show.
I love you. You are the most divine man in the entire universe. Seriously, I'm so lucky that I got to share this podcast with two people I completely love, and so nice to actually hang out like this. Because I'm gonna go. We should have done it with the gin and tonic. That would have been even better. Next time,
we're not ready for that. Let's get renewed for season 2.
Okay, then we can get drunk.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Marina. Thank you so much, Dr. Vincent, for sharing with all of us, and for coming on. And yeah, we will be back with another fantastic interview following on from this one.
Amazing.
Well,
Thank
signing
you.
off.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Bye.
See ya. Bye, everyone.
Mm-hmm.